Qantas adds 20 million seats for frequent flyers as the loyalty battles heat up. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is confident that recommendations from a review of the supermarkets can lead to lower prices. And the final episode of Bluey, the cultural phenomenon, airs in less than a week with no sign of a new season in the offing. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Tuesday, the 9th of April, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Morning, Michael. That Bluey story is definitely one for you.
Oh, it's got me a little bit worried, the potential that this could in fact be the end of Bluey as we know it.
That's something that in your household, that would be a big issue.
Oh, it is. It's keeping me awake at the moment, Sean. Anyway, we'll talk about that one a bit later on. You've got an interview coming up after the show with Ben Gilbert, who is the head of Australian research at Jarden.
Yes, so we talked to Ben all about the supermarkets. There was a big announcement yesterday in terms of a mandatory code of conduct, which we'll talk about in the show. And we asked Ben, what does that mean for Woolies and for Coles and for Metcash, which is the wholesaler for IGA. Also, we talked just quickly about Treasury Wines Estates because there's plenty going on in the wine business, and we asked Ben about that as well.
Yeah, it's coming up after the show. It is a really interesting conversation, so stick around for that one. The main story this morning, though, Sean, Qantas has added 20 million more seats that can be booked using frequent flyer points as it continues to rebuild its reputation among customers. But you may need more points to take advantage.
There's always a but, isn't there?
There is. In this case, that's quite a large but, isn't it?
Yes, it is a large but. The overhaul, which introduces a Classic Plus product, is also in response to the flagging fortunes of the frequent flyer program. Qantas was expected to earn close to $550 million from its flagship loyalty program, but yesterday the carrier said the number's more likely to be between $500 and $525 million. The new Classic Plus rewards program will be available for international flights from July, and the number of points needed for flights will vary depending on whether they're being used in peak season or at quieter times, a bit like airfares. Domestically, the scheme will be rolled out at the end of the year. Qantas currently has about 5 million classic reward seats available on Qantas, Jetstar and partner airline flights. It hasn't changed the number of points needed to redeem these seats since 2019. The new Classic Plus product will cost Qantas about $120 million next financial year, and investors are concerned it actually might be too generous and hurt bottom line earnings. The bottom line to all this, according to Qantas, is it will be easier to use your frequent flyer points to find a flight for the 16 million members of the program. The caveat, which analysts have pointed out, not Qantas, is that it might take more points to actually book those flights. Qantas' share price closed up 5% yesterday.
This whole situation is interesting, isn't it? Because loyalty programs in Australia are really big business. And it seems like companies, and you see it especially with retailers, they just can't operate without them.
I think that's right. Estimates suggest that 90% of adult Australians are part of a loyalty program of some sort. It's a pretty crowded field. Qantas is the biggest one, followed by Woolies Everyday Rewards with about 14 million members. Velocity Frequent Flyers from Virgin is closing in on 12 million. Flybuys, it's around 9 million members. That's the Coles and Bunnings group. Number 5, according to Finder.com, is Priceline Sister Club with 8 million members, which is extremely successful for that pharmacy brand. Loyalty programs work, according to both anecdotal evidence and studies from US universities, because people tend to buy more goods or services. They tend to have a larger basket size as well. Customers are more loyal and they're more likely to refer friends. They can also create brand advocacy, and customers are more likely to interact online. And of course, they're among the best source of data for businesses wanting to sell stuff. There's a flip side though. In fact, according to a recent Harvard Business Review article, customers expect more from retailers if they're a member of their rewards program. If things go wrong, shipping, accounts, returns, hard to navigate websites, loyal customers get much more upset. The loyalty program can then come back to bite them. And maybe that's actually a bit of what happened last year with Qantas, Michael.
There's nothing more satisfying with a loyalty program than getting money off your bill or something, isn't there? It's like with your Flybuys or even with your Flower Power and things like that, where your loyalty program, and you just build up points, and all of a sudden you're there doing your shopping and they say, do you want to take $5 off your bill or $10 off your bill? And it is really satisfying. And I'm just like, here, take my data and give me the money off.
I do get frustrated with some, and I'm not going to name Rebel, but rebel, where you are a member of their loyalty program and it actually gives you nothing, as far as I can tell.
Ah.
The only thing is if you're returning goods, it's much easier because you can give your loyalty card and work that out. But I don't see the benefit in some of the schemes, which I find a bit frustrating, at least like with Qantas or Flower Power or some of those, there's a tangible benefit. Not so sure with some of the others.
Yeah, but then you get like Super Cheap Auto, which I know I'm mentioning them again, but they are one of my favorites because you kind of get your discounts again at the point of sale. So It just actually, even as we're saying this, and when you went through that list of all of the members of those different loyalty programs, I'm like tick, 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 tick.
I know.
It just suddenly realized just how many you actually have.
Yeah, exactly.
And thank goodness for digital wallets and programs where you can store those cards. Otherwise, you'd have a wallet that's about 4 inches thick.
Well, Michael, you did tell me about something called Stocard, STOCARD, where you can store them all. Very handy.
Yeah, it changed your life then, Sean.
I did. Thanks very much.
All right, we better get back on track. Local markets, how did they perform yesterday?
The S&P ASX 200 closed up at 0.2% to 7,789 points. Tech stocks led the way. No news there. They're always leading the way, it seems. Industrials and utilities also outperformed. Energy stocks were the laggards. Among the large caps, the banks were higher, though Macquarie Group finished down 1%. The big miners were mixed, so too the retailers. Plenty of corporate news around. Logistics software business WiseTech acquired Active Data, which provides electronic customs and freight forwarding solutions in Finland. Terms of that deal weren't disclosed. Family monitoring app Life360 surged 17% after it said it was outpacing market expectations after drawing in 4.8 million active users in the first quarter. The Board of Cyber Safety and Internet Monitoring Group Qoria has knocked back a buyout bid from American software investor K1. And an interesting one, APM Human Services is down 29% to $1.15 after warning of weaker profits. Its share price is now 1/3 what it was in mid-2022, and its largest shareholder, Chicago-headquartered PE group Madison Dearborn Partners, over the weekend submitted a revised offer for the embattled employment services group at $1.40 a share. Remember, yesterday it fell to $1.15 a share. Be interesting to see where that one lands.
And just quickly checking international markets thanks to Blue Chip Communication, the experts helping financial services companies market, communicate and grow. Visit bluechipcommunication.com.au. What's going on, Sean?
Well, oil prices fell a bit on easing tensions in Israel. I'll talk about that a bit later on. Iron ore is still trading above $100 a tonne, very important for the big miners, and the Australian budget, of course. Gold's pushed beyond $2,340 an ounce. Doesn't seem to know when to stop, that precious metal, and the Aussie dollar is trading just below 66 US cents.
That was very concise.
It was, wasn't it? Brief, concise, to the point.
Yep. Sean Efficient Aylmer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether that nickname's going to catch on. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says he is confident that the recommendations of an independent review into supermarkets will help drive down prices for consumers.
Mr Albanese said the review by former ALP MP Craig Emerson sought to tackle the trend in which prices for consumers were rising, but suppliers were receiving less for their goods. The report's interim findings recommends a mandatory code of conduct for the big four supermarket chains, Coles, Woolies, Aldi and IGA, and very heavy penalties if there are breaches. The review has recommended against a breakup of the big supermarkets, saying if that happened, it could actually result in greater market concentration. The Coalition and Greens have pushed the idea of forcing the retail giants to offload stores if they abuse their market power, not something that Emerson thought was a very good idea. Under changes contained in the interim report, the competition watchdog would be able to take supermarkets to court and seek fines of either $10 million or 10% of annual turnover. Now, Woolies turns over about $50 billion a year, so theoretically, it could be fined up to $5 billion. Don't think it'd happen, but big number. There are also rules making it easier for suppliers to protest practices by the supermarket chains. The supermarkets were circumspect yesterday, though Woolies came out and said all large retailers, including Bunnings, Chemist Warehouse, Amazon, Costco, they should all be part of the code as well.
And the Prime Minister has appointed Mark Binskin, a former chief of the Defence Force, to serve as Australia's advisor on the response to the Israeli strikes that killed 7 aid workers, including Australian Zomi Frankham.
Mr. Albanese yesterday said the information Israel has provided so far on its investigation hasn't satisfied our expectations. He said he had made it clear to Israel that the deaths of the World Central Kitchen charity workers in Gaza were utterly inexcusable and that action is needed to ensure that such a tragedy is never repeated.
Ansell, the medical glove and protective equipment manufacturer, will acquire the Kimtech and CleanGuard brands from US giant Kimberly-Clark for almost $1 billion.
After a boom COVID period, mostly because it made single-use gloves and protective medical gowns, Ansell has struggled to gain much traction and its share price is down 13% over the past year. It's not much more than 50% of its pandemic peak. It really has fallen a lot over the past couple of years. Management has been cutting costs pretty ferociously, including big staff reductions, but yesterday's move was more of a revenue play. Chief Executive Neil Salmon said Ansell has been looking at the Kimberly-Clark protective business for years. He said the purchase will broaden Ansell's footprint in the scientific and pharmaceuticals industry. The two new brands are known for protective clothing and safety eyewear.
Beach Energy's share price tumbled as much as 22% yesterday before finishing down 15% after it said its troubled Waitsia gas project in WA will cost almost twice as much as initially forecast.
Ouch. The total cost is likely to be as much as $1.3 billion, of which Beach is up for between $600 and $650 million. Its partner in the project is Japan's Mitsui, and the original cost was around $750 million between the two players. Kerry Stokes' Seven Group owns 30% of the oil and gas company, and Kerry's son Ryan is the chair. Beach yesterday said additional quality issues were found on the project during late stages of construction. Production's now slated to start next year rather than later this year.
Rural Group Elders' share price tumbled 24% yesterday after it said first half trading has been significantly below expectations due to the impact of El Nino, low farm gate prices and sustained margin pressures.
Elders said the full year to the end of September this year could be 30% lower than last year. Admittedly, 2023 was a bumpy year, but it's still a big downgrade. The half year ending 31 March started very slowly, hindered by the declaration of the El Nino weather system last year. El Nino weather systems generally come with warmer and drier weather, not good for large-scale farming. Crop prices were also lower, and cattle and sheep prices were well below the 10-year mean. While there was some recovery in January and February, this year, March, not so good.
And thoroughbred racing is big business, and over the past century, only a handful of horses have really kind of captured the attention of the entire nation. Phar Lap was obviously one of them, a little bit before my time, not really before your time though, Sean. Maccabi Diva was another. More recently, Winx, and the first foal of Winx sold yesterday for $10 million, 4 times higher than the previous record for a yearling filly.
Yeah, we don't normally talk about thoroughbred sales, but when one comes along like this, it's worth a mention. It is an astonishing price for what is a 1-year-old horse. So many things could still go wrong. Whoppet Bloodstock, which is owned and run by Winx's part owner Debbie Capitas, bought the filly on the second day of trading at the English-Australian Easter yearling sale at Warwick Farm, smashing the previous record of $2.6 million for a yearling filly. We're talking $10 million here. The horse had interested buyers from Europe, Asia and the United States. Sales House Inglis had a security guard monitor the filly in her stall around the clock in the lead up to the sale. This is all according to the Sydney Morning Herald. Of course, the foal of Winx was always going to attract a lot of interest. Winx won a world record 25 Group 1 races as part of a 33-race unbeaten streak to finish her career in 2019. It's her first foal. She is actually, what's the term, Michael? Pregnant?
Oh, God, this is dangerous territory here, Sean. I'm assuming pregnant is the name for okay. I'm going to do some live Googling.
Yes.
Pregnant horse.
It's something like a pregnant mare, is that what they call them?
She is, when a mare is pregnant, this is according to Google, she is said to be in foal.
In foal. Okay, so Winx is in foal again. And the stallion is actually, it's a US racehorse, a very famous US racehorse. So I wonder whether that particular foal, all things going well, fetches more than $10 million. Who knows?
That is extraordinary. All right, moving on to international news now. Israel's military is withdrawing from the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis, wrapping up a key phase in its ground offensive against the Hamas militant group and bringing its troop presence in the territory to one of the lowest levels since the 6-month war began.
But defense officials said troops were merely regrouping as the army prepares to move into Hamas's last stronghold, Rafah, according to Associated Press. The military chief, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, said the war in Gaza continues and we are far from stopping. Israel's preparing to begin evacuating Rafah of local people, and the process could take several months, local broadcaster Channel 13 TV reported.
Finally, Sean mentioned this one at the top of the show. Big story this week. It is less than a week now. It is 5 days or so. Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday morning is when it airs. The final episode of Series 3 of Bluey, which is supposed to be a kid show, but it is probably the most successful Aussie TV show ever, airs. And so the last episode of the season, it's going to be a 28-minute episode on April 14. Normally they're 7 minutes. So already this is kind of new territory and we're all very excited.
4 times better.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, because that is the way it works. It will be 4 times better. It may be the last of the series ever. And there are a lot of us hoping that is not the case.
So there are a lot of us who don't know as much about Bluey as you do. So if you don't know about Bluey, a few key facts, thanks to Bloomberg. Last year, Bluey was the second most streamed show among all shows in the US. Americans watched 731 million hours of Bluey. Now, that sounds good, but it's actually even better. The number one show was Suits, but there was something like 7 seasons of Suits.
Yeah.
So people binge Suits, whereas Bluey, only 3 seasons, about 50 episodes, I think, a season, 7 minutes per show. So incredible. In China, Bluey's 3rd season has been viewed 100 million times since it appeared on that country's version of Netflix. Typically, the episodes involve 7-year-old Bluey, an Australian cattle dog, and her sister Bingo. Bingo's 5, apparently. There's Bandit, who's an over-exuberant father, shall we say, and Chili, their more level-headed mother. There's Bluey's groups for dads, for college students, for childless adults, and, of course, Bluey's groups for kids. The New York Times called Sleepy Time, which is an episode from the 2020 series, the first year, one of the best TV episodes of that year. Rolling Stone included Bluey in its list of the 100 best sitcoms of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the ABC and BBC, which funds the series, are very tight-lipped about whether there's going to be another season. And the fact that it's a 28-minute episode coming up on Sunday morning, and the fact that they certainly haven't been saying anything about it, well, there's a real fear this could be it, Michael.
Look, Sean, I mean, as you can see, every time I started to interject, you held up your hand just then. So clearly you just wanted to get the facts out before I started to kind of editorialize. But yeah, you're absolutely right on all of this. And Sleepy Time, that episode that you referenced, I once did a top 5 episodes of Bluey according to Michael Thompson list, and Sleepy Time came in at number 1 on this survey.
2, 3, and 4. Really? There you go.
Yep. And I did that on my Instagram account, Michael Thompson Author. Follow me there. And the other thing that is fascinating about this, Sean, is the merchandise, because this has become such a massive business. And I think I read somewhere, maybe in Bloomberg, maybe in Forbes, that it's kind of valued at potentially around $2 billion now, which is quite extraordinary considering it is a 7-minute kids show. But the tie-ups that they've done then with all kinds of clothing and food brands and all of these, and there are Bluey products in every shop around the world now. It is quite extraordinary. So there is a lot of people watching to see whether it will end this Sunday.
You can't imagine it. It came out of Brisbane. There's a guy in Brisbane and he couldn't get funding for it. The ABC wouldn't even fully fund it. That's why the BBC got involved. Am I right in saying all this? And he's won a couple of Emmys, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, because it has just taken off, and then kind of Disney got on board and they picked it up for the US, and really that is kind of when it's taken on this global kind of momentum. And then you had the stars appearing on kind of Jimmy Fallon in the US, and it's just really become a phenomenon, Sean.
I love it when I do some research for an article, for a story, and I do it. And then I finish my bit, and then I realised, I'm welcome to first grade. Michael Thompson knows more about this story than I could ever possibly know.
That's
right. Bluey is an example.
Yeah. I mean, it's the kind of thing that you walk into a workplace and you mention Bluey, And I guarantee you there will be other people in there that you would not expect that would put their hand up and go, I have watched it because they've got kids or just because it was on or just because they're interested in what on earth everyone is talking about because it has just taken off. Anyway, Sean, we have gone on, well, actually probably not long enough, but we're going to wrap it up.
We do have to wrap it up because I need to watch Sleepy Time.
It is great. Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Ben Gilbert, Head of Australian Research at Jarden.
No idea whether he likes Bluey, but I do know he knows lots about supermarkets, Woolies, Coles. On the back of the news yesterday, we also talk about Treasury Wine Estates.
Yeah, just coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 9th of April, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.